provisional international recognition if they demonstrate popular support. Here. Welcome the Prime Minister to come up.
means there's already an existence. Realize also that the most reasons for coup d'etat, often most often than not, is because probably there was bad governance in the government, and on the military decided to take up this force for the interest of the citizens. Realize that the citizens were happy. That's why they demonstrated popular support. How then is this now efficient? It's efficient because outside of the war, it does not bring to you marginalization. It does not bring to you removal from international organization. It means international organization can also help them in this kind of way. That is when there is international recognition of this post-coup government in Africa.
The concept of popular support is flawed because this state has been run by many people, so there has to be support by people. You can decide not to support this individual.
Popular support very easy and support by people. We are like popular support means domestic support. If there was no popular support, it means people say there is no popular, they don't want to support it. Realize that the motion did not say that the military people, because popular support means they willingly decided to support this. This is an aggregated motion, they decided to aggregate their views and say they want to support this motion. Now realize that we're talking about necessity. Why is this motion necessary? Why do we feel that indeed post-granted provisional international recognition if there's popular support? Necessity, making sure of the fact that it is necessary that our stakeholders are happy. Realize that our panel that have been emphasizing on the fact that the only way that opposition can bring government out in this way is when they tell us that they do not, they are not considering the happiness of the stakeholders, which are the people, which are the popular support, which are the domestic support. Realize also that in this space, we are winning over the opposition have because we are emphasizing on the necessity and efficiency of the people's needs and people's desires. Realize that when people are happy, it means automatically there's domestic support. What then is the essence of a government if people are not happy? Realize that the most reason why coup d'etat almost often than not happen was because there was an existence of bad governance in democratic means of leadership. Realize now that this government, which is our post-coup government, has been granted domestic support. It means the people happy. It means there has been development. It means there has been satisfaction of needs. It means things are probably going on well. We are not seeing things of higher GDP. Now realize that this means that these nations are already developing and are pleased with their citizens. Why then do we not that they should grant a provisional international recognition? Why do I think that we win the opposition part of this debate is because I've already analyzed what the world without international recognition would look like. And I've let us know the advantages of giving international recognition to post-coup governments in Africa, telling us that there will be support from international bodies, there will be less marginalization, and then foreign investors will be able to invest. We're making sure that the GDP is panel with this. I want to emphasize on the fact that the only way opposition will be able to win this debate is when they do not come here to tell us that, oh, who they tell are disadvantageous, or look at the advantages, maybe disadvantages, and when they do not come here to tell us that there is no popular support. Because like my friend has already said, there is a existence of popular support. With this, I'm proud to propose. Thank you.
This house thanks the Prime Minister for that
Second, you have to look at this is recognition really important to this post-coup government in the first place. If they were able to answer those two questions, it would have been better to say their case. Always already out. I don't need to listen to their second speech this way. Let me go into my case. Firstly, we are going to show you how firstly we cater for the interest of the international community. Secondly, we are still going to show you how we still cater for the interest of these post-democratic countries. Post-coup countries that exist, post-coup governments that exist. The first thing we are going to give you today's debate is the international principles in the international community. Number one, things like respect for constitutions. Notice that most of those international communities respect their constitution and their ability to be democratically expressed in that particular point. We think that's why things like the UN will always tell you that if you are going to have a chairman, it has to be on the platform of negotiation and election. Things like IC will still tell you that their bodies are going to be free with flexible patterns and all the rest. Why is this important in today's debate? When you recognize these post-coup governments, it means you are legitimizing their actions. That means that in direct principle, the effect, the cause at which they got their effect is justified at that particular point. This is why OO is false. Second piece of argument is particular point. We neglect the principle of global peace. Notice that global peace can only exist in a world where this international community condemn every act of violence. Their side of the world, they will directly embrace violence because they think that the outcome of those particular problems, because people like those violence, mean that it is justified. No, we don't think that. We think that regardless of how people like people, they mock their ability for the government to dethrone or kill their leaders. I think it's still bad because they still kill people and directly violate the principle of human rights. Every human being has the right to exist, even if it's a bad thing. These coups embody violence ways of care and achieving their goals. That's why it is very bad for them. Next thing we'll tell you is that this helps opposition parties like the global north, who are currently divided into things like BRICS alliance and the Western countries like the US to capitalize and play on our vulnerability. That's why today Sudan is still fighting. And they tell you that in that Sudanese war, currently the Navy service in that war helping Sudanese government to fight. Two sides are divided and you supporting one side. And even North Korean Navy service are within that war fighting at this particular country. Why did those wars start in the first place? Because of the resources that exist. In their own side of the world, just to continually make most of these countries that hire our resources to make sure they talk about our leadership and our problem. Being on their own side, their work is not too sustainable because once you have a post-coup government, there's every possibility that another post-coup government is coming again. So you have to give the commission to government after government. That's democratic post-coup government that's been coming out every time and every point continually. Their work is going to lead them in a particular country they will fall into a pit for. Lastly, before I go to my speech, do I should quickly. See you.
International support and international interference.
Let me answer that correctly. When you recognize somebody, it means firstly, you now have to recognize them into bodies. Their application to join like the UN, you don't have any right to reject it anymore because you have recognized them to be main governments that exist. The only reason why these guys cannot come and apply for bodies like the African Union, the reason why they are kicked out of the ECOWAS is because we don't recognize them as legitimate government. They are not even fly. Because once you say that you recognize it and support is not the same thing, it's not making any sense. Because once you legitimize the person's action, it means you also have to buy the cost of outcome of that particular action. But this looks like it that if you slap somebody here and I tell you that, oh, because the person I have is smiling, you justify that act of slapping. Slapping concerns on the outside of the world. So we think they are even more fucked than moving on the shed. That's the case we want to build. Thank you very much. Now let's see my speech into the last part. They say, what he said at firstly, that this will bring that investment. We think in status quo, these people already have investment. That's why I raised the keyword. I said Russia will always support things like Burkina Faso. That's why you see our president always have his flag. The reason why the Russia will be incentive to support Burkina Faso with this particular point is because they have no organization. They will always invest in those particular countries, regardless of what happens. This divide is what will constantly exist on the outside of the world. Investment is still on. Secondly, most of those countries resources that on the outside of the world, this particular Western government can no longer exploit them anymore because most of their governments are not existing on their own. Meaning, therefore, they can always manage their economy and run and function that particular point. That is why the first place they have popular support because they don't need to climb to Western government. That's why when you just stop supplying aid to Burkina Faso, they do not even come out to like lament in the first place. Now, notice one, our public body in this debate is not to come and tell you that the act of the coup, the post-coup itself. We are telling you that the international community itself does not have the obligation to recognize that particular act. We think every popular person, even me myself, you can even say, oh, an Esin, I like this government, but I don't like the way they got into that power. That's why we think it's very, very bad. And you see that those particular things are going to exist. It's what makes you legitimate that particular action. Now, we need to also tell you that in our last argument we're going to bring to this debate is that when you recognize these governments to be internationally recognized, you directly speak on their business status. Notice these countries, most of them were formerly democratic countries. When you recognize them or recognize them internationally, it means that you speak on their democratic status that existed in the first place. Meaning you accept and buy into the idea that when they were not coup governments, it means that their government was necessarily bad, and you buy into the idea of them being continual coups that will exist continually in the next place. We think it's necessary for you to prioritize our own side because when we show you the interest of the international community, we show you the interest of the post-coup government that has existed this side of the house, and we still show you why it's necessary for individuals in themselves to have more without and nothing more recognized. This is why we should go to the side.
Please all notice how opposition has made this argument in the war on the people. To say that this argument that lastly say that this argument bad or not, but the fact that international support do not have an incentive to buy into the idea of international support. Obviously, what his main argument was basically was on the part of the justification of whether the time is bad or not. Now, we feel like the reason why it naturally, immediately we want to approve the government is because they feel that the government is always going to be subject to corruption. And this corruption will also lead to the like loss of interest in people of this particular country or else. We feel like if this is the reason why the entire military should approve government, it's naturally right for these people and that international body to see it as a reason why they should buy into the support of these countries. But secondly, you know this one thing. He said that in these international countries also grant support to African countries, that they buy into the legitimacy of coup d'etat, and then they are also going to promote another coup d'etat. Those one thing, that if this international support, if African countries really want the support of international body, it means that they have a reason. One thing is that the problem that already occurred before the coup d'etat, which means that coup d'etat was the only solution that could cure this problem. If international bodies should come into this particular system, they will grant them an avenue to probably prevent something that will bring an coup d'etat. We feel like this is the reason why African countries will want to buy international support of international countries, because if they want a reason why they should not buy or then provide another or why another coup d'etat should not occur. Because these international bodies who know that yes, coup d'etat are not really there. If they buy into support, they will not necessarily allow these African countries to go through another coup d'etat, because they can give them an option that if this thing doesn't happen, they are already going to cut our support from you, and then you're going to use as your own end. Now, first of all, what we tell these arguments is very simple. That we look at the stakeholders of these arguments, which are the African nations and their citizens, and the African and the international supporters. We feel like if there is going to be public support, whether or not it is forced or voluntary by these citizens, the main thing is that these coup d'etat African nations have their citizens as best interest. What we need to see is that when you find that you're looking for international support, it means that you're looking at an avenue where your citizens can explore international things and where everything can be of beneficial interest to them. Now, those one thing, this international support is not only going to be beneficial to members of the government who went through that, unless you're able to prove that this international support is not going to benefit citizens, your entire argument should not basically do this perspective. We feel like the reason why international bodies would also want to give support to this African nation is because of one thing, that there are things that African nations have that international bodies do not necessarily have. So if you come in the aspect of, okay, yes, mineral resources and the rest of this, there are things that African nations want that African nations will have that these international bodies do not have. But secondly is the act of coercion, because there needs to be an existence of global peace. Now, for the fact that international bodies will always be negating the fact that yes, African countries are under there is no need for us to buy into your idea, and there is no need to support you. It means there is always going to be an existence of marriage between these particular two countries. It seems what this then entails is that there is never going to be an agreement between the African side of the world and international bodies. But then you come to talk about how there is an existence of anti-Western countries like Russia and all. But we then tell you that if what has anti-Western countries that also buy into the idea of having these African nations who are under why is the international bodies not also buying the idea? We feel like there are two similar incentives for both the anti-Western countries and international bodies to also buy this idea, because they are going to benefit from both sides now. There is going to be an existence of cohesion, there is going to be an existence of global peace. Nobody is also going to be banking with that, because yes, the one system of government is different for us, and it's immoral and it's morally injustifiable. We feel like there is also going to be an existence of monarchy and government systems like that in North Korea, where the president doesn't really want to come out of seat, and then subject his citizens to horror and terror. We feel like that's also a reason, as far as citizens are benefiting from this impact, we feel like it's also a reason why the international body should not look at that as an injustified notion, but then as a reason why the citizens are happy. Note one thing is argument, that the happiness of the citizens in this is the most important thing, that anything that is going to benefit the citizens in this particular argument should be considered. Then if international support is going to grant benefit to citizens, then it should be considered. No matter what particular system they are on, no matter how it was gotten, and no matter how it stands in status quo. The second thing we get in this argument is very, very simple. That we want to also talk about how you talk about how there is also West African countries necessarily don't need any natural anything for this international bodies. Now, on the motion, we say we believe that who in Africa should be granted provisional international support as far as they are performing public support recognition. We feel why this is a reason because there already exists a problem why people are already occurred. We feel like this is a reason why African nations, in and out of themselves, will naturally want to be some international bodies. Now, those one thing, if they do not need anything and then they are currently comfortable in bringing their situation in status quo, there is no need for them to consider the fact that they want to join hands with the international society. But the fact that they want international society, it means that there is something that they are attacking in status quo. It means that it might actually be probably the aspect of the division in their constitution system or the division in probably the access to probably of mineral resources and gas. Feel that there is already an existing reason why these African nations need support from international bodies. So the whole argument that African nations are already comfortably in their particular condition in status quo does not need to go in this particular argument. Now, what is this argument? We tell you that there is a natural incentive for international supporter to want to embark in support of African countries. Because now the fact that they know that both that is a bad thing, they want to naturally impact in African society because they want to stop the creation of food, which means they already have they are already granting Africans an advice because they feel like, oh, if something like this happens, could be that is not the only option. We provide you with other solutions and provide you with other alternatives. Also, there's an incentive because international society will also want to build cohesion and global peace. I think probably you don't know anything like this in African society. I think this is the reason why we will go against this argument. Thank you.
First of all, for the Burkina government, we should understand more specifically. Recognition is not the same thing as support. Recognition does not involve support. This international body that you take to support you might give you a lot of arguments. Yes, we agree that you are free, but this does not provide aid for you. You don't recognition or support. Now, moving on to my argument. This house believes post-coup government should be granted provisional international recognition if they demonstrate popular support. And before we even consider believing this, we must ask ourselves a few questions. Why should we allow this? Number one is why we should not even consider it, but it will be the eradication of democracy in and of itself. Now, why is this important? Why is this important? Let me explain extensively. If we agree to post-coup international bodies recognized, to incite them to want to keep that power, which definitely means there won't be any more voting for years. Definitely, they will destroy democracy from within. Now, let's move on. Okay, now, the fundamental principle of looking out for the country is self-majority. The international bodies are definitely going to be more power, which are definitely Germany, as my elder has already stated. If they support, then it will not only be maybe a lot of arguments in our worst case scenario. A few other things, which should be distribution of supporting and military arms and ammunition to keep that power if they are gaining something from this country. No, Africans are always told, which means they are always looking for a way to do themselves. So why would they not want to, as even though it comes at a cost? No kind of yes, to keep that power. So when the future citizens want to opt out of this, they will no longer be possible, which brings about chaos and trauma. Now, moving on to my first argument. We create one thing, if we actually do this motion. Number one, two-phase government. On their best case scenario of government, it stops corruption and creates a utopia. But panel knows corruption exists, and the signs of silence for human rights and autonomy on their side of the house. What do I mean with government? In a world where they tend to be happy or face the consequences. Not to say military government, so actually they can do anything. And like I said before, there is no human, there's no personal rights and human autonomy. And panel, we are okay. Now moving on to my third argument. Unity of Africa. Because other African democratic countries, while we have this post-coup and kills peace in Africa. Note that is how ECOWAS council sanctioned Niger from Nigeria, because Nigeria feared that it will incentivize a coup in Africa. If international countries recognize it, also means that first have to recognize it. But so I trust no African country want to recognize a country that is taken over by a post-coup government. By a post-coup government. Now I don't care why so I'll organize the
We say that the main reason why we need international recognition is because this international exercise will help African countries not to go anyhow. Prove that the international recognition itself, and people will not be subject to power.
No, this is not a democracy. This part of this called these two countries are military by military government, investment of business. So now they will not want, they have only one specific thing they want to prove that dominance. If you actually want to actually give them the choice, you simply eradicate the bad government or force and provide them with a new system of democracy where the leaders are not corrupt or the leaders are actually pure. And so I think that's pure. So yes, I'm moving on to my third argument. When other African countries notice that they could actually get international recognition, it pushes them to pushes these African countries to try for a coup, which will topple the government and innocence will be caught in the crossfire. No, Palestinians have not got 10 million. They want only one, the person to get rid of the old government because they assume it will be better. But when they notice that they actually opted for something worse, they cannot literally come out because no evidence for this is just going to be a military government. Now moving on, what does this happen? Military government will ban things like constitution, which want to bring about which may be profitable to them and not the citizens, mass majority of business. So they will hold or they will attack human rights and stuff. In every depending on Nigeria face, a lot of things happen. You cannot speak against the government. You cannot ask them. You better not say to somebody that is source very well. You will see backlash from every single sector, which are against international community, international. So you also have to tell us why, even though these things will exist, international government will therefore give them the recognition and in your case support, which you cannot answer. Okay, now moving on panel. Okay, panel, they can engage post OG's scenario. The coup is used when a country like Marlin has been which has been slowly corroded by the present government. The coup was justified. But if the fact that they took that power and sat on it for that specific time and refused for the people to vote, okay, and you guys are now choosing a new government that is completely biased, they failed to show that because they literally sat on this power and you can actually Google it out. They are the coup is still in power. If they did one thing, eradicate democracy in and out. So they are better than the former president. Now moving on again and again. Okay, panel, we are not painting a world. In that, okay, I'm not painting a world where if African countries want to fight their government, we're not putting that it's bad. Now the issue is okay, the issue is that it may cause when this coup or this is of power for themselves, okay, when this coup or these people that keep that power for themselves and to stop the democracy, it's a big problem because the stakeholders, which we talked about, have traded one dictator, one bad government for another that will last for a lifetime. For example, Burkina Faso, they had a president who was there for 40 or 30 years. This coup happened, this coup happened. Now they now have a military government or a coup that should stay for another 40 years and then it will determine. I never more powerful.
This house thanks the deputy level for that speech and welcome to the government.
begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Hello. Our leader of opposition came to a point of respect for constitution. Our deputy leader of opposition also came with a point for constitutional respect, lack of respect for the democracy. I just have one thing to analyze. Now, in the info slide given to us and the question given to us, there is local support, domestic support, all agree. Domestic support implies that they were liberated from a problem. Example, Tinubu in our current status quo is a problem. So now, if he was eliminated from the problem into an area like this, there is domestic support. So that's your point about, the media can show, the happiness of the media can be shown. That's not what you put that one out of your asshole, but that's not what was written in the stuff. There is domestic support. Now we are supposed to debate for international support. Now, you were the ones that said and started with international recognition is not the same thing with international support. When you came with your first speaker gave us examples of international interference, which I put a POI on, because we're talking about things like exploitation and the rest. Exploitation on its own is a word that connotes that there is no consent. So that is not a point. I will take you this away. Now, why should international bodies support a country that has a coup when there is domestic support? First thing is knowledge. That are suffering inside the country, people that are living inside the country are because there has been a shift in the status quo, meaning that an international body, you cannot imagine how it was before. So now, when you now come and you withdraw support from which causes many issues that I'm going to also be touching on, that's causing more problems for them. Now, lack of international recognition and support leads to lack of United Nations representation. So, in a scenario where you guys were talking about public aid and the rest, most of those are run by the United Nations, which is a body that controls international, a lot of countries. So, in a situation whereby they lack international support, meaning that that's their country, the head of their country, lacks representation in the United Nations. And when that happens, automatically, a country that is already suffering due to the former government that has been taken away is plunged more into desperation and economic despair. So, are these people who are stakeholders here truly happy? Now, principle of sovereignty is our second point. Each individual state the ability and the right to have sovereignty over their own choices and their own decisions. So, if international support is withdrawn from them due to their own choices and their own decisions, that automatically negates the priority. Yes, so.
Do you think that domestic support can change?
Yes, but that's not the question.
Okay.
That was not the point. Okay. Now, we're going to talk about the best case scenario of their work. Now, we talk about how inside the world, if international support is withdrawn, we're going to have African countries will be able to have this thing because they're exploited. So they're going to have their natural resources. Yes, let's say the natural resources are booming. Let's say that they do not need other people to come and help them with refineries. Let's say they do not need to import. Let's say everything is going smoothly. Who are you going to sell this to? Because one of the best ways, one of the ways the world is known for withdrawing support is doing trade embargoes. And if a trade embargo is stated in a country, automatically they're not going to make any money because any currency and everything is going to be circulating inside that country. And after a while, if you guys know the principle of economics and how money works, after a while, the money in the country is going to lose value, quality, automatically changing the people's way of life. So, as you said, the people that are your stakeholders, are they really happy? No, I don't want to. Now, this country has been started out. They mentioned, I said I wanted to smash this point. They said that, what they call it, a coup d'etat is how power is exchanged in a military system of rule, and it overthrows democracy. A democracy which is supposed to be a government of the people, for the people, and by the people, is overthrown because automatically that implies that it was not the people's choice. So if that democracy was not the people's choice and they are happy about the overthrow, meaning democracy is flawed, and in a flawed democracy, the consequently
information help the people that are in the populace that support this government.
So the first point, if you have ears and you're listening, that's everything I've just finished. That's the thing. Because a country becomes a state of sovereignty when alliances, when it's working in the United Nations. So we'll go back. Alright. Lack of international support. My second one. Lack of international support leads to removal of alliances. So your word of violence is a very tricky word because when alliances have been removed, everywhere is free game for war. And when there's free game for war, that stuff that you're protecting so patiently is going to be taken by force and bloodshed. So the people that you're stakeholders, are they happy? Because their safety has been removed, their economic safety has been removed, their physical safety has been removed, their spirituality has been removed. Because who knows the kind of country that is going to come there and take them down. If the Muslim country is a Christian, if the Muslim country is able to enter something like Ethiopia, who are mostly Christian, automatically the spiritual safety is going to. So your stakeholders, are they still happy with these people that are proud to propose and progress?
I'd like to give my speech to my brother, Obinna. Break your boss. You guys don't put it out. Regardless of how so yeah, shout out to the government. So that's my speech in 3, 2, 1. Point of certain clarification that needs to be made in this debate for us to have a good round. So first of all, on the clarification of what international information looks like, we've already gotten a lot of premise on the opening governance or the opening half in retrospect. But this actually looks like Aguigwo or deliberations or recognitions by organizations or charters or foreign investments within these countries by other countries. So this is important. Second, the whole debate is on whether or not international organizations should recognize these countries or should recognize these countries based on their ability to demonstrate a certain level of support. So it's based on the ability to demonstrate support that we have this debate. Why is this important? It is important to give us the training of what my best ways into the debate and why we win because of our own level of analysis, so on and so forth. Firstly, we believe that this action will not happen because of the concept of support is flawed and should never be seen. You need to understand that these post-coup countries look like countries that are undemocratic in systems. This can be either military rule, so on and so forth. So undemocratic countries are usually characterized by certain principles of certain losses, which are basically the violations of human rights, violations of freedom of expression, people are able to regularly air their views, and therefore there's a one-sided look on how the actions should look like. Secondly, we think that support is in partnerships, right? We feel like this support can not only be citizens within the states, but also countries that converse the states, right? We believe that these countries all have people who all have states that naturally them or naturally co-align with them. But in a precedent where these states no longer co-align with them, this support is forward. We've already seen in African context that ECOWAS, AU have directly tried to engage the problems that happen within this Mali, so on and so forth. So you can see that already the support within these nations is flawed. And we can only see that the support around these nations by others also flawed. This is important because of 2 reasons. One, because it creates a precedent where individuals, where communities or international communities have to support have to recognize a state based on their ability to demonstrate a false sense of support. Which means that in this state, regardless of whatever they do or their actions, is going to be taken as, that they are going to be killed, so on and so forth. So the support falls and it will be there. So that's the piece of clarification that is being made. The impact of this action means that there is going to be a continuous state of war within these nations. This is bad because at the end of the day, no one likes wars, no one likes present wars, or so on and so forth. Second reason why we believe we should support this action, because it goes against the principles of international communities, so on and so forth. You understand that in a lot of international communities, the UN, the World Health Organization, even countries alike, are seeing the president as watchdogs over societies, watchdogs over states, to see whether or not they are keeping to their standards of rule or standards of rule of law, so on and so forth. This action is morally inconsistent, goes against their of freedom of speech, freedom of human rights, moral consistency, so on and so forth. We believe that this is problematic because it limits the abilities of these states to be able to act right in other presidents or situations where things like this are presented. So at the end of the day, if they are to support or to recognize these nations based on this flawed sense of support that you really got managed, at the end of the day, they are not able to naturally, their whole principle system of being watchdogs or being takers to democracy are flawed. If I continue, any okay, so we also believe that this is wrong because individuals can no longer be able to create the president for themselves. So I think the third piece of argumentation that we get from our own bench, which really brings this debate, is how this action creates a resident president for within these nations. You have to understand that these international communities are mostly countries, right? Countries like the US, the UK, so on and so forth. If these people, based on state responsibility, every state has a responsibility to their people to uphold or to look after the rights of their people or look after the benefits of their people, right? If they are able to show, if they start showing support or regard for certain democracies or certain places or certain states that do not necessarily show or do not have these principles or keep these standards, it is problematic because they lose the trust of their people within the states. At the end of the day, they lose the trust of their people within the states. They lose the trust of their people to be able to act right in circumstances. And it is problematic because, as we told you, state responsibility, and at the end of the day, we get the full vision of what this bench looks like, right? So, lastly, right, just a little bit of comparison. What do you get from our opening, right? Or what do you get from the opening? Sorry. What do you get from the opening? And why do we distinct ourselves from the opening? The opening tries to tell you that this support can change, therefore and therefore. But it distinctly this support is flawed because of the false sense of the actualities within the states and the fact that these are military states and they have to show a sense of support to these nations. We think this is important because our bench is the only bench that can directly shows you why this is bad and why other international communities, whether it's the UN, the US, or whatsoever, cannot support these nations. And we think we win this debate because we are the ones that show you with great analysis, brilliant analysis, of course, why we win this debate. Thank you very much.
So how do they pay on the guarantee that our world is actually better? They fail to give an
we don't have international support. So do we want these already some people to be more burdened than they already are? And furthermore, she also spoke about a flawed democracy. And a flawed democracy will definitely lead to a flawed control. So why not we trash it? Now I also want to portray on what the opening opposition has said and refute that point as well. So they said that okay, she said something and I quote, oh, I might like it you said, okay, I like this government, but even though I like the government, I don't like the way they got in power. She failed to actually tell us how this has impact the day. It was just like, why would you be like, oh, because I don't like the way they got into power, I wouldn't support them? It's not really a metric that we should follow. They also said, or they mentioned social media control. And they didn't even extend on it. And they mentioned that people will not be happy. They just mentioned the control.
First of all, first of all, your partner with yourself. You need domestic support and care. Second, you need that sometimes it's just only short-term solution. Example.
My partner already answered that before, and I think I can because they're all so loud and so loud.
We believe that sometimes this is only a short-term solution. Example, coup for a long-term problem.
It is not a short-term solution because people have had a long-term problem. The long-term problem is actually their bad governance and the way they are being treated. Now I've told you my right first and how our side of the world needs the detriment of actually not getting this international support. Thank you.
Please, let's use our voices. Thank you. This house thanks the government for the speech and welcomes the opposition with come around of the debate.
Okay, before I start my speech, I would love to say a big thanks to everyone who has supported me thus far and has helped me to get this far. Thanks for doing this with me. Thanks to Olabi Victor. Thanks to you and everybody. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so I'll be starting my speech. Okay, I'm going to head the timer once I'm sorry. Okay. So I'm going to be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. But before I go into my speech, I think a word which everyone necessarily supports is a word that gets for the Africans, and not just the Africans, but also internationally at large, right? I'm going to be doing a couple of things which include extension of my partner's case and also with this debate and essentially telling you why we win, right? But I think a couple of unique things which get for my partner in today's debate is one, showing why support is like flawed in and of itself, which clearly explains. Two, showing you how these people are necessarily oppressed, considering the undemocratic state of these countries. Three, showing you like state responsibilities, that is, which like necessarily is lacking in the world of like psychology, right? But another thing which my partner clearly showed me, which I would like to extend, is in terms of like the undemocratic, like this, like post-coup country, right? It necessarily looks like a country without structures. It looks like countries without like things like checks and balances. It looks countries who necessarily like hide under the shadows of sovereignty, all in the names of like propagating harm. So and we want you to understand that what in these countries, most likely have things like what less incentives to yield even to like organize like international bodies and all sorts of things like that. Also, another example case, panel is on survival rights. And we want you to understand that what in our world, just like my partner clearly showed you, what we clamor for is a world that necessarily allow you to go through short-term, longer-term solutions. necessarily do is that what it is a call to change. But I understand that there was an if in this one, which my partner clearly showed that it doesn't even guarantee that these people popular support, which they all clamor for, necessarily exist in and of itself, right? So, but the whole business and what you necessarily get is what things like what better happiness, a need for change. When they necessarily do not even get like this support, because the emotion does not clearly say that they get it. It says if, which my partner clearly showed me was what flooding and of. Now, what they necessarily see the need for change. All the arms which they necessarily clamor for what is even good to outside of the house because they see what they need to improve because of what instead of what sticking to inside what status quo and like the norms society, right? Panel now, a couple of what we bought house and also why we ran about in today's debate, right? I think I'll be starting from side C. What will we basically get from side C in today's debate? Side C basically brought to this video, right? The base was about knowledge and two on something. Panel first thing was on knowledge. But the first thing we want you to understand is the fact that what people necessarily not a particular thing, although the motion clearly stated that if does not mean that what it is true or probably like these people necessarily have this right in themselves. But my partner clearly showed you that what most support is not dependent on knowledge. It is dependent on increasing mass. That is people necessarily see that everyone is supporting this. Despite the fact that they are oppressed and all of it, necessarily go for it because of what they don't want to be condemned, they don't want to be undermined, they don't want to be the one that will be like, oh, probably we are going like against our government. When we clearly show you that these countries are undemocratic, they have no structures, they have no checks, they are not that even use as call-out mechanism for them. Even the so-called sovereignty that they want to trample upon are things which they want, still want to what hover and eye over, right? Second, my 5th minute. What the government tell us about, oh, it's on how loss of ties and all those sort of things. It's not like this. And we want you to understand that what worst case that is, or even if we like here, which we do, right? In their world, things like what trade will still exist. But what we necessarily want to call is an act of violence. So in our world, we prioritize a world in which like this violence is called in and of itself, right? Let's quickly move to like their opening. What do we get from their opening panel? We get two necessary things, right? They came to tell us about how their world is necessary, like the necessities of their world and efficiencies, right? And also like subjections to corruption. Finally, we want you to understand, we clearly show you from side C what their world in and of themselves looks like. A world without structure. Panel, if it is on corruption, we feel like our world does better like than their world, right? Panel, what do you necessarily get from our world? Our world is what that necessarily stand with what? Those who want this. Panel, we feel like things like such as what are things that will necessarily exist in our world in and of themselves. But in their world, panel necessarily exists is a world where people are necessarily oppressed, where their rights are trampled upon, and they cannot do anything. The government cannot be called and all those sort of things, right? I'm going to take. You don't have a POI, let me take it.
First of all, when domestic support is incentive by international sports want to bring the check and the sign of check and balance in society. But prove that the harm to your side, why prove that will not be another solution to alleviate this harm to society?
Can you understand? The major reason why we necessarily have this situation in the first place is because we want like countries which will necessarily like avoid this like what? War. We want a country that will necessarily avoid this like seeing war, violence, crime as norms in the society, right? And our world is the only one where you necessarily get it. Even though like the entirety of governments necessarily say, oh look, in our world, what you necessarily do is what? Stabbing the people and all those sort of things. But panel, we clearly show you that what? Even this participation in and of themselves, even which they claim that, oh, these people show, is very problematic because of what? Most times, even these so-called people do not concede even to this participation. So why should even international relations buy this in and of themselves, considering the flaws of what? This post-coup like country in and of themselves, right? Also, panel, we want you to understand that from outside of the house, the reason why we do not buy anything from side government is because of what? Beyond the fact that like these people generally are oppressed, it also states like a kind of template like between different countries, right? If like their countries themselves have been oppressed and all those sort of things, how much more like surrounding countries like within them? If other surrounding countries cannot support them, then why should the what? International relations support them? Panel, I'm going to be going to like why we necessarily rank above our opening, right? A couple of things you get from our opening in today's debate is to come here to tell you about how like the interest of like international relations are like are very important, and also like how it leads to like the unity of Africa, and also like existence of investments like short panel.